intersection of making art and making money. Hello and welcome to episode 115 of Explore Your Enthusiasm. When I asked the members of my online community what they wanted me to podcast about next, all of them said the same thing. They wanted me to cover this topic, which is reframing. Coming up with a new frame for a situation or a problem or an obstacle or a way of thinking that is not working for you. So this is episode 115 of Explore Your Enthusiasm with me, Tara Swiger. Today we're going to build off what we did in episode 114, which was talking about looking at things from a challenge mindset versus a threat mindset. So if you haven't listened to that yet, go to taraswiger.com/podcast 114. So the word podcast and then 114. Or you can listen to it however you listen to podcasts. So you can subscribe to Explore Your Enthusiasm on iTunes, on Stitcher, on whatever app you use. And it is now on Google Play. Yay! We just uploaded it to Google Play last week. You can also find all of the recent podcast episodes on YouTube at taraswiger.com/YouTube if you prefer to watch videos, and you can subscribe there. So last week was challenge versus threat. You want to listen to that maybe before you listen to this one, or listen to this one, then listen to that one, to kind of build on each other. So what we talked about last week was approaching things from a challenge mindset versus a threat mindset. And at the very end of the podcast episode, I gave you a way of reframing a threat into a challenge. And I told you could ask the question, what's the best possible outcome in any obstacle you're dealing with? And that will help you shift something from a threat to a challenge. Now that is an example of reframing. So we're going to talk about a lot of other ways to do that reframing today, because that is such a popular topic and people ask me about that all the time. And whenever I do one-on-one sessions with clients or I'm teaching a live workshop, invariably we come across something that I say, well, maybe we need to reframe how you're thinking about that, because the way you're thinking about that is really like getting you stuck and you can't see a way forward. So in order to get unstuck, we need to think about it from a different perspective. That's what we're going to do today. If you're an email subscriber, then last Thursday you got an email where I walked you through the process of reframing something in my own business. I shared a recent obstacle. I told you how I was looking at it as a threat, and then I asked a question and I reframed it as a challenge. And if you're not an email subscriber, you can easily become one if you go to taraswiger.com. There's a big pink box. You subscribe there and you'll get these weekly email lessons that nobody gets anywhere else. And I share some stories, some behind the scenes, and both from my own business and from the people that I work with. So last week I kind of walked you through the reframing in my own business, but I want to give you examples for how you can use it in your business. So that the move from a threat to a challenge is an example of reframing, or changing the way you think about a problem, like the frame you put around it. So if you think about I like the metaphor of reframing because it's like if you're looking out at a big vista, right? Like we have some gorgeous scenic overlooks here in the Smoky Mountains and on the Appalachian Trail, where you are seeing like just gorgeousness all around you. If you held up a frame and you pointed it in one direction, or like your phone, and you only looked at what was in the frame, it's going to be completely different than if you turn 180 degrees and point it someplace else. Or if you get really close to one trunk of one tree and you hold up your frame around the trunk of the tree, you're going to see the bark and you're going to see the texture versus seeing the big vista and overlook. Or if you turn towards the rock, you're going to see the rock in front of you versus the big vista. So reframing is all about taking that frame that isn't helping you and shift it over so you can see what else is in the picture. Because our business is big and complex, there are always options and choices and things that we don't see the first time we look at a problem. That's not a failing. That's just how our brains work. We can only absorb so much of it at a time. And if you feel stuck, often it's a matter of shifting the frame to a different aspect or area of your business and reframing the situation by looking at a different picture. Sometimes you're going to zoom out and sometimes you're going to zoom in. So when I ask members of my online community what they most wanted me to podcast about, this idea of changing your perspective is the thing that they said, one right after the other. I was hoping they would give me a list of a bunch of different topics, but instead they all said, no, reframing. No, I want reframing. I definitely want reframing. Talk about reframing. So I actually had recorded a podcast about this already. It's episode 3 of the podcast. So it was 2 years ago. I've learned a lot since then. I've done this a lot more with clients and in classrooms since then. But if you want to learn more about reframing, you can listen to my different perspective 2 years ago in episode 3. You're going to find that at tarswiger.com/podcast3. Or if you subscribe to this in whatever subscriber tool you use, you can scroll all the way back to episode 3. But they said that even though I had already done a podcast episode about this, they wanted me to talk more because this is a tool that they both use in their business and that they forget to use all the time, and they wanted a new episode to remind them. So this is for you guys who asked for the episode on reframing. Let's talk about what reframing is. The simplest definition is reframing is just rewording the phrase you use or shifting your perspective on something. So we usually want to focus on reframing when it's a problem, a challenge, an obstacle, or just a confusing situation and you're not sure how to approach it. So it's a tool used in psychology. It's called cognitive restructuring in cognitive psychology. And it helps people identify and then change their irrational thought patterns. So I found it helpful whether you're in a full-blown anxiety or depression, which is when therapists use it, or if you're just struggling to stay motivated in your work on your creative business. So although it's a tool used in therapy, I don't want you to think it's just for situations that need therapy. You want to use this in anything where you feel stuck or when you can't see the light or you can't figure out what to do next. But with that said, the more I was thinking and writing about reframing and cognitive restructuring, the more I was reading it, I realized that I really need to say this. If you are suffering from depression, anxiety, a total lack of motivation across your life, and it's really impacting everything in your life and not just your business, go talk to your doctor and get help. Talk to somebody about it. Reframing can be really helpful, but often we're in situations where we can't see the light anywhere. We can't see what to do in any situation. And our business is just one reflection of that. There's also our family life and our money situation, our living situation, and our relationships. So if you are feeling any of the things I talked about, talk to your doctor and get help. This is just one tool, but I'm not a professional doctor or psychologist, and someone can help you even more apply this and apply all kinds of tools across your business. So that said, I found that everybody I've talked to, no matter how mentally healthy they are, when it comes to working on their business and working on their dream and making it happen, it involves taking risks and it involves struggling with irrational or maladaptive thoughts. It involves getting kind of lost in the weeds and then finding your way out. It's so easy to get embroiled in self-doubt when so much of your time is spent doing the things in your own mind, right? Like the thing about being a maker or an artist and working on your business is it's all stemming from you and your ideas and your motivation and your vision. So it's very easy to get stuck in your own head about these things. And it's easy to lose motivation when you're the only one motivating yourself, when you don't have a boss or an outside person expecting you to do something. And it's very easy to just get stuck in swirly thoughts when you don't have anybody to bounce those thoughts off of, or you don't have anyone to tell you, stop, go work on this. So I want to just say that everybody I've ever talked to about their business has told me, oh my goodness, yes, sometimes I will get stuck in a swirl. Sometimes I'll lose motivation. Sometimes I will not be able to figure out what I should be working on. That's totally normal. So if that's what's holding you back from doing the very next thing in your business, right? If you kind of feel like you know what you should do, but you're not sure how to get started, or you can't see where to get started, or you just feel like nothing is working for you, then let's look at a tool that can help. Let's look at reframing. So here's the thing. It's very simple. I almost feel like I kept thinking, how can I do a whole podcast episode about this? Because it's so simple. You just look for another frame to put around the situation or a new perspective that is going to help you handle it better than however you're handling it now. So when you feel yourself swirling in self-doubt, when you feel like something is a huge failure, when you're not sure what to do next, you want to reframe the problem that's in front of you. And then it comes to how. How do you reframe the problem that's in front of you? How do you find a new frame to use to look at it? So I found that asking questions is the easiest way to do it, because instead of so if you say a declarative sentence, you're basically trying to make yourself believe something. But if you ask a question, you then automatically are going to start generating answers. And it's not that you're trying to convince yourself to believe something that you don't believe. You're simply saying, what are some other options? So always, whenever I'm dealing with anyone that feels stuck, the solution is usually to ask a question. And so here are some of my favorite questions. One, we talked about in challenge versus threat. What's the best possible outcome? So this is really useful when you're dealing with something that feels awful and like it sucks, or you're scared of it. What's the best possible outcome in this situation? Another one of my favorite questions is, what else is true? And this one I learned years ago from Javi of thefluentself.com. She asks us a lot. What else is true in this situation? So if you are like, this is awful, this is horrible, there's nothing I could do about this, I'm definitely stuck, the question, what else is true, is really helpful in coming up with ideas, what else is true. Also, is there another way? So if you're looking at it and you're like, well, the only way I could do X is if I do all this other stuff that I'm not able to do. Either I'm not smart enough, or I'm not capable, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the money. Well, is there another way? Like, that sounds like a really complex way. Is there another way you could go about doing it? And then when has this worked out for me? So a lot of people have dread about the future and how it's all going to work out. Well, when has it worked out well? And then you can look at, like, what are the qualities of making it work out well in that situation? How could you apply it to this? Now, we're going to give some examples of all of this, I promise. But the real challenge in reframing is remembering to reframe when you're in the moment of swirl, or you're in the moment of doubt, or you're in the moment of stuck. But the easiest way to kind of remember to do it is to turn it into a habit. And the best way to build a habit is to link it to something you already do. Like, the easiest way to start a workout habit is to link it to when you first wake up, or when you brush your teeth. Or the best way to start a journaling habit is to link it to something like drinking your first cup of coffee, or going to bed at night. So you want to link reframing to a habit that you do over and over. Now, I found reframing is most helpful if you remember to do it when you're actually in the struggle, or when you're using a non-useful frame. So to make it a habit, you could link a reframing question to a pattern of unhelpful thought that you regularly have. So if the swirl that you get stuck in is everything is awful, and by the way, whenever I start thinking everything is awful and I say it to my husband, he sings it as a Lego song from the Lego movie, everything is awesome. So it helps if you sing everything is awful. When you have the swirl of everything is awful, you could ask the question, what else is true? Now, in the beginning, identifying a thought is the first step. Identifying that you're having a swirl thought, you're having the unmotivating thought, the unhelpful thought, the not useful frame is the first step, just identifying it. And then once you've identified it, link up a reframing question to it. So whenever I have this kind of swirl of a thought, I ask this kind of a question. For me, one of the questions I ask the most often is, what else is true? So my cat has to go to the vet. The last time I took a cat to the vet, we found out he was going to die, and then he died, and he actually died when I was out of town, and it was awful. Next week I have to take Stella to the vet, my other cat, or my still living cat, and then I'm going out of town to teach right afterwards, and so it's really easy to think I'm going to take him to the vet, then she's going to die while I'm out of town, which is what happened to Andre. Well, what else is true? What else could be true? Is there another way this could work out? That's what I'm talking about. It's linking the question to the dreadful thought. So another example is like, I don't want to do X. I hate doing X in my business. It's awful. I feel like I have to do it, but I don't want to do it. So what's a question you could ask is, what's the best possible outcome? What's the best possible outcome of this situation? That's a really good question for me taking my cat to the vet. Maybe the best possible outcome is that, like, we find out she just has the flu and she's fine. I don't know if cats get the flu, but you see what I mean. So my recurring unhelpful thoughts, the examples I shared, might not at all be the same as yours. Yours might be totally different. So your challenge is to identify your own unhelpful frames that you apply to situations, or the things that you get stuck in, and then identify the moment you're having it and link it to a reframing question. Ask yourself the question. So the more often you do this, if this sounds like, well, I'm never going to remember to do that, be reassured. The more often you stop and identify the unhelpful question and apply the reframing question, the easier it'll be to do it. The more often you'll recognize the thoughts and the more easily you'll switch into reframing mode. Also, talking to someone else can really help. So when I do one-on-one sessions with clients, I can hear their unhelpful frame and say, well, is that true? Or what's the best possible outcome? Or what else is true? And help them reframe it. So a lot of times this happens in conversation. So I've actually kind of trained my husband when I'm saying this about the business, just ask the question instead of trying to come up with a solution, because actually we're looking at it from the wrong perspective altogether. Ask a question, what else is true? Or what's the best possible outcome? And that helps because it's sometimes hard to catch yourself in the thought. So to help you identify your unhelpful frames, since yours might not be mine, and maybe everything I'm saying, you're like, I've never thought that before, I am going to give you a list of some what psychologists call cognitive distortions. So these are things that have been identified and researched by cognitive therapists as things that people get stuck in thinking that are irrational and unhelpful. So I have linked to descriptions of all of these in the transcript, and you can get the transcript at tarswiger.com/podcast115. You scroll down, you put your name and the email address, and we'll send you the PDF of the transcript right away, where I've linked to all of these cognitive distortions and actually a Wikipedia article that lists even more. These are the ones that I find that makers and artists have the most often. Or really anybody who's working on their business that I've ever talked to participates sometimes in these unhelpful distortions. So here are a couple, and you can think, does that sound like me or not? The first one is all or nothing thinking. Like, if I didn't do everything, then nothing is going to work out. Or if I can't do every single step of my marketing plan, I'm not going to do any of my marketing plan. Or if I didn't do 10 webinars, I might as well not even do one. So it's all or nothing thinking. There's also catastrophizing, which is when you click on catastrophizing article, it redirects to exaggerating, which I don't know that that's very helpful, because in the moment, catastrophizing feels like the situation in front of you is nuclear. It's going to ruin your business. So a line of catastrophizing thinking, which is one of my personal favorites, is that launch didn't go well. Not as many people bought it. Oh no, my business is dying. I'm about to have to go get an awful day job. That's catastrophizing. Another two are fortune telling and mind reading. This is when you assume that you know something that you couldn't possibly know. So fortune telling is when you assume that you know what the future will unfold. Like, what will happen if you do X, Y will definitely happen. You have no way of knowing that. Mind reading is the same way. If I say this, I'm sure they'll react like this. You don't actually know that. Right? It's also like, I think that this person is thinking X, Y, and Z because they reacted in this way. Well, the more often you do that, the more you're going to put a lot of your own thoughts on them, which you don't know are true or not. And you might make all kinds of assumptions. Now, this goes back to assuming the best. This is one of my early podcast episodes. We talk about how important it is to assume the best from other people, assume that they have your best interest in mind, that they are being kind, that they are not the worst people ever. And mind reading and assuming the best have a lot to do with each other. The next one is negative filtering. So that means an example of this is you do a craft show, you have 50 people comment on how great your thing is, and one person say, ugh, I could make that. Negative filtering is when you look back at the craft show, you only remember the negative aspects of it. There weren't very many people. One person said she could make it herself, and I didn't have as many sales as I thought. As opposed to positive filtering, which is focusing on the 50 people that said they loved your work. So when you get stuck, when you find yourself reflecting on an experience and picking out all the things that went wrong, realize, oh, I'm negative filtering. So you could ask yourself a question like, what else is true? Or what else happened? Or what was the things I want to remember that were great about that experience? Another distortion is overgeneralizing. Like, maybe, so it's taking one event and thinking it applies to all events. So like you have a craft show that's not so great, and so you overgeneralize to be like, craft shows don't work for me. I hear this all the time. I have business owners tell me, Etsy doesn't work for me, Instagram doesn't work for me. Shopify doesn't work for me, craft shows don't work for me, wholesaling doesn't work for me. And I'll say, oh, how long did you try it? And they'll say, well, I did it once. That's overgeneralizing. Now, if you don't want to do one of those things for other reasons, that's totally fine. But one bad experience, you can't overgeneralize to be everything, or else you'll hem yourself in a corner because lots of things don't work out in the beginning of your business. You have to keep trying them to figure out how to make it work for you. And then the last one is personalizing, which is when you take something that's not personal and you turn it personal. So if someone says, in your booth, oh, you don't have it in pink? I wanted it in pink. I wish you had it in pink. I wish this came in pink. You personalize it to mean you suck because you didn't make something pink. So that's one example. Another example would be if someone writes, I see this all the time. People tweet and blog, I hate when people XYZ. Maybe it's, I hate when people promote their business on Instagram. I hate when people talk about their business too much on Twitter. It has nothing to do with me, and yet I take it and I personalize it, and I think they're talking about me and they hate me, or if they ever found me, they would hate me, right? That's personalizing. When you take something that doesn't have anything to do with you and then you apply it to your own personal situation, that's a distortion that can actually make you really stop doing a lot of the things that are going to be helpful in your business. It'll make you play small. It'll make you not be too loud. It'll make you not do anything that anybody has ever said they don't like, which is no way to build a business. So, as I was saying that list, did you recognize one of your own unhelpful frames? You probably did. We all operate in all of this. As I was doing this research and putting these links together, I was like, oh, that's something Jay does. That's something my mom does. That's something this friend does. Like, we all do some of these. Also, I do all of these all of the time. I mean, if I haven't made that perfectly clear, I should definitely say I'm not just assessing other people. Something I do as well. So to start your own reframing, I want you to pick one obstacle that you've applied one of these cognitive distortions to, or you can just pick your most used unhelpful frame. So if I said personalizing and you thought of like 10 ways that you personalize, pick that and ask the reframing questions. So here are some examples of things. Just last week, I asked my Starship captains, the members of my online community, what are the things. Okay, you told me you want me to podcast about reframing. What are the things that you need reframing for? What do you need to reframe? What unhelpful frame do you apply to your business? And here are their actual answers. Somebody said, I never get anything done. She's like, I say that all the time. I never get anything done. And then if I go back and list what I did, it's a huge list. But my unhelpful frame is I didn't get anything done. Either because I'm applying the frame that, oh, that doesn't really count, or I am just discounting. I'm just not thinking about what I did get done. So I never get anything done. A helpful reframe might be, what else is true? Like, what else is true about this situation? You might feel like you didn't get anything done, but what else could be true? Another unhelpful frame is, and I heard this from a lot of people in a lot of ways, this isn't a real business. A real business would be, and then there's a whole list of things. A real business would be outside of the house. A real business would make more money. A real business would have a boss. A real business would be recognized by the people in my life as being a real business. A real business would have employees. A real business would have its own location. All of those unhelpful frames, if this isn't a real business, keeps you from treating it like a real business and working hard like it's a real business. Because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for unhelpful frames that actually stop you from working, right? So if you have an unhelpful frame that says this isn't a real business, a reframing question might be like, A, is this true? And another question is, what else is true? Or how is it a real business? So like you just turn it around. If this isn't a real business, how is it a real business? Well, it's a real business if you've sold anything to anybody. You've got the start of a business. If you have products, you have a business. If you have a website, holy crap, you have a business. If you have a business name, you can say you have a business. Now, that might not be the business that you want. So another helpful thing to do is look at, why am I saying this? Like, what is the gap in between what I have and what I want? And then what are the steps to take to fix that? So instead of just keep saying this isn't a real business, how can I make this feel like a real business? What parts of it do I truly want, and what parts of it are just like what the outside world says is a real business? So another unhelpful frame that a lot of people shared is I'm not a real designer, or I'm not a real artist because I only do X projects. So somebody said I feel like I'm not a real knitwear designer because I only do fan-based projects. Someone else said I'm not a real artist because I mostly work in pencil. Someone else said I'm not a real artist because she does commissions. So obviously, if you're on the outside, you're like, well, you're still an artist or designer because you're still doing projects. But for them, they feel like they're not a real designer or artist because they're only doing something else. Another thing I hear a lot of is that there's not enough money or there's not enough time. My favorite reframe for that is saying, why? Like, why is there not why is there not enough money, but like for what purpose is there not enough money? And then you can come up with solutions where there's plenty of money, or the thing doesn't cost money, or there's plenty of time. So there's not enough time for what? Getting specific helps you see the ways that you have the time or the money to do the things you really truly want to do. Often you just don't have the money, but you do have the time, or vice versa. Or your expectations are out of proportion and you need to reframe them into something more reasonable for your business or your life. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to pick an unhelpful frame that you use often, or pick a situation in which you feel very stuck or very swirly or very like, I'm not sure what to do with this. Pick a thing. Right now, write down your current thoughts about the situation. Apply that unhelpful frame. Use that cognitive distortion. Write it out. Just whatever is your current thoughts on the situation. And then identify what frame you're using, what cognitive distortion you're using now. Are you catastrophizing? Are you all or nothinging? Are you trying to fortune tell? And you might be using a couple. And then ask one of the helpful reframing questions. What's the best possible outcome? So if it's a situation or an event that you're nervous about or that you're worried is going to go wrong, or you're trying to fortune tell about how it'll go, what's the best possible outcome? This will also help you really get prepared for the event. So like the vet, what's the best possible outcome? Well, helping think about that will help me actually remember to tell her all the things I want to tell her about the cat. What's the best possible outcome in this craft show? A lot of times people will say, well, did I sell $2,000? Okay, well, do you have enough products to sell $2,000 worth of products? Do you have everything you need? Do you have enough packaging? Do you have enough business cards if that many people come into your booth? Like, identifying the best possible outcome can also then help you identify actions to take. So what's the best possible outcome? What else is true? Is there another way? Is there another way this could work? And how has this worked out for me in the past? What are good outcomes that have come from this in the past? Now, not all of these questions are going to work for every situation. And keep in mind, some things are just sad. Some things are just a loss. Some things are just, it didn't work out well. The question is, how did that shape your frame moving forward to other things that you don't know about yet? Right? So you don't know if a launch is going to be a success. You don't know if that craft show is going to work out. And that uncertainty can have us applying distortions and trying to figure out what's going to happen. And reframing will help us not only see it in a different light, but actually do the work that it takes. So my big concern is not just how you're thinking about things. This is not about thinking positive. This is about thinking in a way that motivates you to do the things you can do to move forward and actually you make the situation better. Because sitting at home and thinking about nothing ever works out and I never have enough time and there's never enough money and that will probably fail because this other thing failed and those people probably hate me because I made this mistake. That's not motivating. You're not going to do any work from that point. You're not going to make anything better from that point because it's hopeless. There is nothing to come from it. But if you can reframe at least one of those, you can then see the options that you have and the actions you can take to move forward. So I want you to pick a thing, write your thoughts, look for the cognitive distortion, reframe it, and then write the answer to that question, that reframing question. Pick a question and then write out the answer. So you can take the time to write this out anytime you feel stuck in your business, or you can do this quickly in your head. Once you've done it a couple times writing it out, and by the way, I've practiced this myself too, especially over the last couple weeks, it becomes more easy for you to do it in your head. So whenever you catch yourself doing one of the distortions, you can eventually you'll get in the habit of kind of reframing in the moment. Now, this doesn't mean you're never gonna get stuck or feel frustrated, but it does mean that you'll have one tool that will help you reframe it and move forward and take action. So it's my hope that reframing is gonna help you spend more time working in your business and less time feeling stuck or swirly about what to do next. And I'd love to hear how you guys are reframing. So I feel like the more we talk about this and the more we share reframes, the easier it is for us to come up with our own reframes. Invariably, someone will share how they thought about something in a different way, and I'll be like, oh, that so helps me where I am right now. So share how you're reframing. Share it with all of us on Instagram. Use the hashtag #ExploreYourEnthusiasm in your post, and that way we can all find it. Make sure you spell enthusiasm right. There are a couple photos tagged with a misspelling of it, which I found because I misspell it all the time. So hashtag #ExploreYourEnthusiasm, and then click through and see what other people are sharing. Again, you can find the transcripts, which have links to everything I talked about, at taraswiger.com/podcast115. And I want to hear about how you are reframing things. So share with us at Explore Your Enthusiasm. Thank you so much and have a very enthusiastic day. Thanks so much for watching. You can get weekly lessons like this in your inbox, along with access to worksheets and checklists and transcripts from all the podcast episodes when you sign up below. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and YouTube will notify you when there's a new video. And you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. If you do, be sure to say hello or leave a comment below the video to let me know you're there. Thank you so much for watching, and have a very enthusiastic day.